So I told him I was nearly late.
Had to dig deep into the closet to find that. Heather, do you want to get going or give it another minute or so?
I think we can get going. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us during your lunch hour today. We're very happy to see all your faces and feel that it's really important to keep our business leaders connecting in the community. And even more importantly, we love to bring the wisdom of Kyle York to you all today. I know that Kyle probably defies introduction for most of you, but just for comprehensive sake, he is currently the co-founder, managing partner and CEO of York IE. And in such a capacity, we know that he is a great firsthand example of dealing with leaders during this challenging time as they try to evolve on all levels, operationally, culturally, and organizationally. So love to kind of let Kyle lead this discussion. And I know even despite his role right now, over the past decade, he's, I know, invested in multiple companies. So it's just a great perspective that we can bring to our leadership group here today. I know you've done a lot of guest speaking opportunities, Kyle, but in my humble opinion, this is the best audience right here on this Zoom of the local Manchester community. So thank you for bringing your insight to us today. And in terms of format, so you all can know what's ahead of you, we're gonna do about 20-25 minutes with Kyle. That can be very interactive and chatting as a whole group. And then we'll go into breakout discussions for about 15 minutes and reconvene to share insights from those discussion groups. And we'll have you out of here by 1 o'clock, promise. So without further ado, I'll throw the baton over to you, Kyle. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Very excited to be here. I could hear myself on feedback. If everyone could kind of just mute their Zooms, that'd be great. Awesome. Well, great to see everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces. Some I've talked to recently, some it feels like it's been years, but it's probably only been 8 months or however long this damn pandemic is going. It's a wild world out there. We don't have a president-elect yet, you know, and last check over my shoulder to the right. So, you know, just lots of crazy things going on. Doesn't seem to be necessarily changing very rapidly for the better and continues to linger. So I know we're all dealing with that in our own domains. You know, I think from my perspective, you know, kind of growing up in a small family business, many of you know, I come from Indian Head Athletics family business and being involved in lots of local family businesses and in the community my whole life. You know, one thing I like to talk about a lot is, you know, and you know this better than anyone else, there's always something that goes wrong in your day-to-day life, personally, your relationships, your family, your professions, your jobs, your neighborhood. You know, if life were easy, you know, we'd all be running for president. I don't know if anyone really wants that gig. But the reality is there's macro crises like the ones we're facing and lots of death by 1,000 paper cuts crises that we all need to face every single day. And I think one thing that's never been more true that I think many times is lacking in business and certainly in my world in tech and growth businesses is a little bit of empathy and a little bit more EQ, right? I think understanding that everybody is dealing with their own internal battles, their own challenges every day is just something, frankly, that I think is often too overlooked. Another thing I think is often too overlooked, and it's especially true right now, is sort of mental health and burnout, especially of executives and entrepreneurs. I talk to them every day from all around the world. You know, again, dealing with the macro challenges of the world right now, but also just the things that are breaking, you know, talent that leaves or the customer who quits you or the hours that are shrunk there's always something, the pain in the ass landlord, right? There's always something that is racking your brain and keeping you staring at the ceiling at night. And I think it's an important reminder these days to focus on a little work-life balance. I mean, when you're working in the environments we're in, and also just focus on your mental health and try to avoid burnout the best you can. Uh, a lot of people ask me what my hobbies are, and it's an interesting question for a guy who's like a freak when it comes to business and working. A big part of what I do in working with companies and startups and scaling businesses, is my passion and is my hobby. But to really be able to grow and evolve, you need to find those outlets to keep yourself sharp, to keep yourself grounded, to keep yourself motivated, and to remind yourself what you're playing for. And so, I do that obviously through a lot of the my family's large, my direct family, as well as my siblings and folks, and everyone's kind of around the area. It's a challenging time without as many sports going on, or not the same level of sports. These are the things for me that have always been my outlets. I just bought a big green egg to start to Carrie, you'll love that, to try to do a little bit more slow cooking of meats to give me a distraction on the weekends. And I think it's just necessary in these times to find that thing that's different than work and different than the stresses you're dealing with to also get through this. So York IE, I mean, we are dedicated to helping reshape the way startups are built, scaled, and monetized. The Silicon Valley game we play in, and the one we helped build Dine and worked at Oracle helping lead, we think has celebrated a lot of the wrong things that get measured when it comes to the success of a company. Getting back to the pragmatic roots of Main Street, not burning money from venture capitalists, having thoughtful, efficient, pragmatic growth is something that we think is important in the tech and startup landscape. No different than it is in many of your worlds who are running nonprofits or running local businesses. I remember growing up, if we didn't make a profit, we didn't have dinner, and I think that's something, a spotlight is shined on that big time right now as it relates to this pandemic and things out of our control and trying to battle through it. When the pandemic started, we started to notice, I see Joe here, who's one of my partners in New York IE. We started to notice and started actually talking a lot with Mike Skelton and a few others, my brother Travis. A lot of the work we were doing to help our customers and our investments in tech and our other domain areas triage and adapt to this challenge were things that we thought obviously needed to be brought back to the local community. We were happy to launch with Mike Skelton in the chamber, the Main Street initiative. We went to the Union Leader and Primary Bank, and we tried to bring in some extra oomph to help evangelize some of the local stories of companies in our community, many on this call, who were on the fly reinventing their business models and thinking about how those business models not only could help get through these times, but potentially add new revenue streams and new opportunities in the future. We also worked closely with the New Hampshire Tech Alliance. One thing I started to notice, I'd put on my AirPods, which I used to make fun of these things all the time. But I put them on and I'd walk my neighborhood, or I'd be downtown Manchester and I'd be walking around, and I started to bump into my neighbors more and bump into folks in the community more. And I started to realize that like so many people who live here work for global companies. They just happen to live remotely. Historically, they used to hop on planes or even ship down to Boston every day. And once I started to realize this a little bit more, we work with the Tech Alliance to try to launch an initiative of like calling all these people back home and trying to get people a little bit more integrated into the broader business community in the state. And again, these are just initiatives that we wanted to try to do to give back a bit. but also just to sort of corral what was already happening, but isn't always so centralized or obvious to many. When the pandemic hit, we the three areas of focus we really put on our portfolio were, number one, you got to hunker down for 120 days. This is so unpredictable. You guys remember what it was like in mid-March, right? It was like no clue what just hit us in the mouth. There's the great Mike Tyson quote about you never know how you're gonna react until you get punched in the mouth, right? I mean, that's how it felt. And so we worked really hard with our portfolio, even with our local businesses, our restaurant, with our commercial real estate properties. We're just like, okay, how do we, even with all the nonprofits we're on the boards of or support, it's like, how do we sort of like bide time and make sure we're lean and mean for this 90 to 120 days? That was a big focus right on the outset as we had just a ton of unpredictability in our business lives. The second thing we really made people focus on, and if you haven't done these things, catch up. It's not too late. We made everybody reforecast the calendar year and reforecast their 3-year long-term model, both on a expense line, which is the natural thing to do, right? I mean, it was pretty easy for some businesses when no one wanted to work because of the great unemployment benefits they were receiving once those kicked in. But really focus on expense management, expense planning, not just in a 3-month, not just in a 9-month, but in a multi-year horizon view. And then do the same thing on the top line, right? And again, think about the ways in which your business and your business model might be able to evolve to these times. And thirdly, think strategically. I think one thing I even realized, like, even though we've had a pretty good and successful business career, one thing that was a real reminder for me when this all hit off is York IE, which is my core business and my tech investments business, is also a startup, right? It's a brand new company, with in an industry we're trying to disrupt with a new business model. And so we very similarly had to say, okay, what things were we not focused on strategically as the third pillar that we should be focused on, or that this time or this shift to remote work or this shift to different type of hours in your day or work environment, what strategic endeavors could we undertake or could we think through that we hadn't before? And can we accelerate those things? And so those three things, I think, are the things that ironically you should be doing at all times, right? You should be looking at your quarter ahead. You should be continuing to have your past quarter's performance and your this month's performance dictate the investments you're going to make into the future and into the years ahead. And you should be always trying to think of those knobs and levers strategically that might help harden your foundation of your business or help you continue to grow or scale it, either in the top line or either in the profit side of your organization. So here we are, right? I mean, what's the date today? I should know this. I mean, we're November 5th. As I already said, we don't have a president-elect yet. As far as I can tell, it's the same. It feels like my screen is frozen for the last 48 hours or so. But I think we're in a world where, lastly, and then I'll kind of open it up to some conversation. I want you guys to do an exercise when you get a minute. And I do this basically once a week. I write down all the headwinds that I'm facing in my business or my family life. And I just write down all the things that are blowing in my face and holding me back or slowing me down or not enabling me to professionally or personally develop. And then I write down all the tailwinds. And I think when COVID hit, everybody just hunkered down a little too much. And every board meeting I'd go to, every talk I'd have with an entrepreneur, all I would hear about was the headwinds and the unpredictability. And sure, that's absolutely true for the local restaurant. That's absolutely true. We have an investment that's a software for wedding venue management. Well, shit, no one's getting married. We can't have crowds of more than 10 people, right? And so, sure, there's some businesses where the headwinds are so obvious and so in the face of the industry. I have a good friend who runs Lola. It's a travel booking platform, right? These are very, very clear. And those are where I think you need to reimagine business models. But many businesses that we'd talk to, or nonprofits we'd talk to, it was unbelievable what tailwinds were actually opening up. For York IE, for example, where we focus, we invest in enterprise software like Zoom, right? So all of a sudden, more people were like, oh, that's what you mean? Oh, that's what Dime did? Oh, that's what you were trying to grow at Oracle? And all of a sudden, it became a tailwind for us to say, wow, the only thing in the public markets from a market perspective that's growing, enterprise software. We're all home, we're all using the technology and tools more, and without it, we are not going to succeed in any walk of life. And so I think I encourage everybody to hopefully continually try to flip the script, think optimistically, look for the tailwinds in your business, reimagine business models. One thing I think too many companies are also doing is reimagining business models only in the short term. I would always try to think about reimagining business models and how this creates new opportunity that you can sustain, right? So for an example, if you're a restaurant who didn't have outdoor seating or didn't have a big to-go following, don't just do those things now for this period. Whatever you implement them thinking about how you might be able to sustain them and have them be new channels when the old channels come back, right? Because they will come back. So that's what I'll leave you with. It's if there's one lesson from today is ride your tailwinds, double down, focus on them, invest in them, find your best talent, leverage your best talent, use your network, your infrastructure, your resources, and power through the best you can. So anyway, let's leave it at that. Mike, I see you're unmuted, which is great, which means you probably have a list of questions or thoughts, but love to open it up.
I had one I wanted to throw out there, and it might be one that others want to bring up in the focus group as well, or the small groups as well, is the remote workplace is one of the overriding trends of this whole experience. And so many of us went to having our teams working remotely when that was kind of a rarity before. And now it seems like that there's some permanency to that trend, where it could be flexible, it could be permanent for some businesses, but long story short, we're going to be doing a heck of a lot more of it than we were before. And so one thing I've heard from a lot of business owners is about managing and engaging that remote workforce. And so much of like how you lead and manage your team was important and critical to every business before, but now you have this totally new dynamic. So I'm curious if you have thoughts about that, what you've seen and observed, but then I'm sure there are others here, and maybe we get to it in the small groups, that's probably a really good sharing topic, because I think depending on what type of business you're in, what type of team you have, there's lots of different ways to tackle that.
Yeah, I think we have a black swan event that hits us, and because of that, you're going to have massive shifts in how companies operate. When we were at Oracle, 150,000 people, right? If you weren't in headquarters in Redwood Shores, no matter how senior you weren't that important, right? Now it's a ghost town. I mean, if you Google search Oracle's headquarters, it looks like you're like in another planet. It literally looks like Star Trek or Star Wars. Huge campus, 5 massive buildings, empty, right? A lot of big tech is actually shutting itself down, even some of them all the way through 2021, where they're saying stay remote. Very, very interesting. So I think that is a massive Band-Aid rip for many traditional industries and large organizations that never in a million years would have let every single person work from home. On the other side of the spectrum, you also have smaller companies who I think have been more apt to be a little bit more flexible anyway. It's one of the benefits of being smaller is your ability to implement things that the big guys or gals can't out there. So I think that's just an important characteristic of this. It just accelerates a lot of it for everybody. I mean, from our perspective, again, I talked about it a minute ago around like the collaboration tools and enterprise software and the technology all being online and the need to run our companies. I mean, my father retired in the summer of 2018. All of his inventory was on paper, right? He still wrote receipts, like literally had like the old receipt like thing that with like you scrolled, you like rolled it out and you pulled out the next receipt and wrote it and gave you the pink slip or the yellow slip on the back side. So I mean, I think it's a really fascinating disparity between what we in tech and software can get away with, or even other industries can get away with, from what actually Main Street can do. And you know, Main Street, you know, certain businesses are just physical businesses by nature, and retail, restaurants, bars, they're physical by nature. So it's really, really hard to adapt. It's hard for a restaurant to say we're a cloud kitchen now and we're going to ride that trend. So I think this is one of the biggest shifts that will have some staying power, Mike, but I think it's going to be different by industry. I hope it just leads to more flexibility. I hope it leads to more great talent moving to a state like New Hampshire. I hope that the people who move here and stay here also create the next wave of great flexible companies. And I think that is the accelerant and the Band-Aid rip that would have only happened with a pandemic like this. Again, potentially a tailwind for lots of different industries.
Okay, that's a great place to pause and get into our breakouts, actually. So the discussion question we were thinking is, what leader mindset, and so I loved how Kyle talked about empathy and our own coping mechanisms and outlets. So it can definitely be centered around your own motivational and leadership style, or it could be a business model evolution. So either of those things, whatever you want to talk about in your groups, the leadership mindset or business change that you have found to be the most beneficial during this time, in thinking about how you would, I loved how you said evangelize your story, and how you would frame around what your organization has done during this time. Obviously, we don't have time to develop our whole stories, but discussing what that single, if you had to put it into one single mindset or business shift, what would that be? And discussing that amongst your group. And then we can come back in about 15 minutes. So it's going to be a pretty quick discussion, and share thoughts as well as, you know, Q&A. So does that make sense to everybody? Thumbs up. Yes. Okay. All right. So we're going to pop you all into breakouts now, and we'll be bringing you back in about 15 minutes. Enjoy.
Be it in my business, you know, just seizing more of an opportunity with digital, because obviously we're all, you know, in that sort of mode. But one of the things I offered, you know, is that even in a larger company where I've spent a lot of my career in larger companies, you know, each little group is its own little fiefdom. And I always, you know, my role as a manager leader of that particular smaller group within a very large corporation was I looked at my little fiefdom or my little group, and it was really up to me to create, you know, culture not dissimilar from culture of the larger organization, but to create engagement and to create, you know, culture within that sort of fiefdom that that naturally tiered up to the, and was consistent with the top level vision or mission of the company. But it was a good breakout session, and it just went by quick.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. What about you, Diane? I know you had I think you ended up with a large group in your case.
We did.
Yeah.
It was great to see so many friends on the call, but also to welcome Tim. I hope I'm going to say it right, Tim. Breeze and Teas, a new business that started down on Elm Street, another branch he opened up, and to hear Breeze Teas, thanks. It was just exciting to hear, he started in February and how his company has pivoted to tackle new ways of driving business. And we all just shared how we're working differently, but seizing the opportunity and get creative. Susan talked about the Dairyfield School and really supporting the kids. And there's been a lot of challenges. We talked a little bit about remote work and what is this going to look like and how some businesses are probably going to continue this. But I love what Kyle talked about when he said the mindset, the leadership mindset, and really having all of us to reimagine our work. So it was a good discussion. I probably could have used another 15, 20 minutes to talk more about it. And Janella, it was great to see you. It's been a long time.
Yeah, the time constraint is definitely an issue, and trying this for the first time, those are the things we're going to figure out. Does it spend more time in discussion, or is it spending more time in a big group? That's always the trial and error piece. But thank you, Diane. That's awesome. I know that we had Jeremy who wanted to share some insights from his group.
Hey guys. Yeah, so thanks for the message here. And our group, so Brent and John Clayton with the museum, and John T with the Franco-American group there, Brent Kiley. We had a great conversation. There was a couple of things that emerged really fast, and that's that while we're all trying to figure this out, some of us have been through challenges like this before and others haven't. So really great from a leadership perspective to document what works, and to have maybe a playbook that you can pull out. And even though it may not be perfect, it's kind of like, I think the way Brent put it was, you get to the end of the game and you've got one play left, clock's down to 5 seconds. What play do you use? And there are people in our organizations that have never been through it, and being able to lead the team to be able to shine some light on what's worked in the past was probably the biggest idea that we came up with. John, the Franco-American, I don't know if I'm saying the right group, mentioned that that people are also under a lot of stress. So while we're navigating this, while we're staying in communication with our clients and our employees to say, listen, no news right now just means that we're here, we're communicating with you, just know we're here for you. But that people are under extra stress, and that having a little extra patience and acknowledging the fact that people are trying to figure it out will win additional opportunities. And then the last one was don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are things that you're already doing well, and after the numbness goes away, say, well, let's keep doing those. And then the new things that we add, maybe we should continue doing them. Yeah. So that's kind of what, hopefully I captured most of that, but.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeremy. And that's that empathy piece, right? We all have that equalizer right now of empathy and knowing that we're all going through a similar crisis. So, okay, kicking it over to Paul. What did your group come up with?
Our group was a dynamic group, and I think we focused on some of the challenges that people who are forced to working remote have faced. Mike had some really good points about you guys just remodeled the office in February, and then this happened. But a number of different people shared stories about different employers investing in infrastructure for people that were working at home. And I think that the empathy was also a part of our discussion. And people need to have an empathetic message from leadership, but they also need to have expectations and the mission redefined or reinforced, whichever. As a lot of people just aren't, what do they call it? The FUD factor, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Everybody's sort of faced with it. Mm-hmm. So, and different industries too, the restaurant industry, Carrie talked about that passionately, but that's a hands-on people business. It's a lot harder for them to find the tailwinds. And we all agreed that as Tony said, the tailwinds aren't quite as obvious.
Right. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Trini, are you still here? You always have some wonderful words of wisdom.
So
There she
no
is.
pressure there, Heather. Actually, my group, I was with Robin and
Oh, yes.
oh my God, Joe, thank you. So please chime in here because we had a really neat discussion. Really also appreciating the headwinds and tailwinds. The thing we thought of adding was between those wins are as a human being who has great needs for self-care and making sure you're managing your own energy and your own ability to be with those headwinds and tailwinds, because both of them are really a lot of energy, right? So to be sure to take care of yourselves. And Robin, I think you mentioned putting on the mask, so that you're able to take care of everyone else. Let's see. I think that was one of the biggest ones. And then just the opportunity to reimagine that. I find that with COVID, things are happening anyway. They probably were there before COVID, and this whole time that just surfaced up everything. So it's an opportunity to take a look at those things that are really, we can't ignore them anymore, whatever it is in our business, and just to be with them gently as we can. But Robin or Joe, please jump in. There's other things.
Well, I think one of the things that I took away from it is it's an opportunity to really improve ourselves. And how do you reflect back on whether or not you've done a good job on a day-to-day basis? Because it's so easy to fall into complacency and drift, especially if you get challenged sometimes during this COVID. And so one of the questions I ask myself at the end of the day is, would I fire myself if I were the boss? And that helps me to stay on track and make sure that I'm doing the right thing for my business.
That's a difficult question.
It is, but I'll tell you what, it kicks yourself in the butt pretty well if you're honest with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we only have 5 minutes, and I do want to give any opportunity to ask Kyle any more pointed questions. Does anybody have a question for Kyle or thought?
Nothing too hard, please.
No?
Actually, one comment I was going to make might spur a question. The point you made about some of the things in the business that perhaps were already broken is a great point. We saw this a lot, early stage startups who are just trying to figure out their product market fit. They're trying to figure out their business model, their pricing model, their investments they're making. We actually saw COVID as a major excuse to cover past sins or poor execution. And we had to really, really sniff that out early on and be obviously incredibly polite and non-demoralizing as you address maybe some of those issues, and almost give like a one-time get out of jail free card that, hey, there's a spotlight on you, but listen, never let a good crisis go to waste. Like you can fix this if you make some changes to your expense line or make some changes to this team over here or to your brand or whatever the issue might be. So, I thought that was a great point that was just brought up about like some things are brittle always. Maybe it shines a better light on it.
So true. Yeah. And Jeremy's putting some great comments in chat, or I think it's just a chat to me, but the whole like panic in advance. It's hard to create that urgency to fix what's broken until you really have the urgency, but somehow as a leader, feeling that and embodying that when you're not in a crisis time. I think.
Yeah, and I thought what Tony and my group talked about around like the tailwinds not being obvious, I thought was also great. It's like, either you need to seek them out. Like he said, like I can't sell digital marketing, which he does. Digital is booming, but not selling it to hospitality industry. So maybe switch verticals and then jump on that tailwind, right? Like, so like seek out the tailwind and then double down on the tailwind once you find it, right? So, it's a different way of thinking. I think it is actually potentially helping people focus more and stop chasing shiny objects in business and like get to what, your repeatable, unique value proposition actually is.
Mm-hmm. So true. Thank you so much, Kyle, and thank you all for joining us. I wouldn't be a good chamber team member if I didn't mention our next upcoming event, which is the Economic Development and Infrastructure Summit, November 16th through 19th. So that's a 4-day event, since it used to be a 4-hour breakfast and no one wants to be on a 4-hour Zoom, that's for sure. So it will be broken up into 4 different lunchtime chunks. So definitely check that out and hope you can join us for that. In regards to this program, the first time doing this type of virtual CEO roundtable, please give us your feedback on how you enjoyed this. We really find value in just connecting business leaders, but also want to bring some content to discuss that's meaningful, which is where Kyle came in today. But I love feedback. So I'm going to send out a post-event email that will have the guest list as well. So if you want to continue to connect with each other, but you don't have the contact information, that will be made much easier. And you can just reply to that email and give me feedback on how you enjoyed this and how we can improve it moving forward. So we'll let you go on that note. And thank you so much. Have a wonderful day in the 60-something degree weather. Enjoy.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.